It is time for the warm embrace of algebra. And we're going to do that with imaginary numbers and vertex form style quadratic equations. So let's go back to what we've been learning. We have learned that I is simply equal to the square root of -1. And we're going to use that to solve these equations that we should also kind of have a general idea of how to solve. So what do? We get rid of that positive 49. I'm going to subtract 49. And I'm going to move that over to the other side, just like we've always done before. But when we get here, we're going to get that -49 on the other side. Well, then we ask ourselves, okay, so how do I get rid of this square? You should know the answer. We get rid of a square with a square root. And what we do to one side, we're going to do to the other. The square root and the square are going to cancel. We're going to be left with x minus 5 equals to the square root of -49. The square root of -49. And so we need to take that. Well, when we take the square root of -49, just like we've done before, we should know this. That's like saying the square root of -1 times 49. And we already know based off of what we see here, the square root of -1 is I. So I'm going to write I. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the square root of 49, which we should know, square root of 49, 7 times 7 is 49. It should be 7i. And remember, when we take the square root, there's going to be a positive value and a negative answer and a negative value. So I'm going to write x minus 5 equals to plus or minus 7i. Then we still have one more step we need to do. We need to get rid of that -5. We're going to add the 5 over. And when we do these problems, we're going to treat I very similar to an X. So we can only collect like terms if they both have an I. And in this case, the -5 and the 5 is going to cancel. We're going to be left with the X that'll come down. So X equals to 5, which is this 5 right there, plus or minus 7i. Okay, we can't combine them because they do not both have an I or an imaginary number attached to them. Now, you do need to remember that there are two answers with this, okay, just like before. Those two answers is the first one, the one that goes over the top. So 5 plus 7i. That's our first answer. And our second answer is going to be the bottom one, 5 minus 7i. So 5 minus 7i. We got to remember that we're talking about taking the square root. We have pairs of answers often. Okay, one is going to be positive, one is going to be negative. Okay. So let's go down to the next one, just slightly more complicated, but not over the top. We are going to start this one. It's got a little less algebraic steps, but the breakdown of 252 is going to be a little trickier. So we're going to get rid of this square, same way we did before. We're going to take the square root. Okay, square root, square root cancel. We get x plus 12 equals to the square root of -252. So very similar to what we did before, where I'm going to bring this value over here, and I'm going to rewrite it. I'm going to write, okay, well, -252, that's -1 times 252. I know that if I take the square root of -1, that's going to give me an I. So what we need to do now is find out what the square root of 252 is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down 252. So 252 would be like 2 times 126. 126 would be like 2 times 63. 63 would be like 7 times 9, and 9 would be 3 times 3. Okay? Now, what you should remember from before is when we break these radicals down, we are now going to say, okay, well, 252 with the I in front because of the square root of -1 is the same thing as 2 times 2 times 7 times 3 times 3. That's all of this right here. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to do what the square root asks us to do. It says look for groups of 2 that are the same. So there's a group of 2 that are the same. There's a group of 2 that are the same. And then what we do is we swing them to the outside. So the 2 goes here, 3 goes out here, and we clean everything up. So I'm going to say, okay, well, 3 times 2 is 6 with an I, and whatever is left in the radical, in this case, just a 7, stays in the radical. Okay, so 6i times the square root of 7. So I'm going to write x plus 12 equals to plus or minus 6i times the square root of 7. Remember, when we take the square root, there's a positive answer and a negative answer, okay? Now we just go right back to what we know how to do. We're going to get rid of that positive 12. I'm going to subtract that 12 over. Okay, so there's our next step. When we do that, I'm going to write x equals negative 12. It does not have an I on it. I'm going to write plus or minus 6i times the square root of 7. So there are going to be our answers. And just like we did before, there's two answers, okay? We have to go above. We have to follow it above, which would give us negative 12 plus 6i times the square root of 7. And then we also have to go below, which would give us negative 12 plus, oh, dang it, negative 12 minus 6i times the square root of 7. So we have both of these answers. All right, y'all should try out the next one and hope all goes well.